So welcome. Welcome to the Three Principles Global Community webinar. The Three Principles Global Community, or 3PGC, is a nonprofit organization that is committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles as introduced by Syd Banks to people throughout the world. And today we have with us our special guest, Ken Manning. And let me tell you just a little bit about Ken. Ken has been interested in finding simple solutions to help people be at their best for as long as he can remember. He pursued 3 degrees in psychology from Brown University, Lesley College, and the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. He practiced as a clinical psychologist for 20 years. In parallel to his career in psychology, Ken also has a strong background in business, including roles in various startups as national sales manager, director of marketing, and advisory board member. He co-founded with his son-in-law a successful software development company, which he still leads. In 1999, he began innovating ways to bring insight principles into the corporate world and joined with partner Robin Charbit to form their company, Insight Principles. Ken has been married for 40 years, has 2 stepdaughters, a son, and 5 grandchildren. He plays the piano, loves the outdoors and all kinds of sports and exercise, travel, photography, woodworking, and spending time with family and friends. And the topic today that Ken gave us is realizing your spiritual nature, living more deeply from within. So please take it away, Ken.
Thank you, Stephanie. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all from so many places. So great to see some familiar faces and lots of new faces. So, I could launch into talking about all kinds of things, but I don't really know what you're that interested in. So I'd love to hear from some of you what you'd like to hear about. I wrote up a blurb about what I'm interested in these days, but I'd like to know what aspect or what angle on it would be useful for you. So anybody want to share a little bit about what would be helpful?
If you'd like, since there are quite a few of us, it may be easiest for you to raise your digital hand so that Ken can see you and call on you. You should be able to find that under the reactions button.
Yeah, Marlene.
Hi, Ken. I love this topic, your spiritual nature, and I'm curious how you introduce this into the corporate world, where some people might view spiritual as woo-woo or have some thinking around it that it has any religious connotations. So I'm just curious how you broach this topic.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Marlene. Anybody else? You all must be enlightened to have nothing on your minds. Yeah, Bill?
It's Connie. Hi.
Bill and Connie?
Yes, I would like for you to talk about how you take people who are valuing and so involved in their mental world to see that our experience is just from our moment to moment thinking.
Okay. That's a great question. Anything else? Anything else on anybody's mind? Yeah, Rick.
I kind of thinking like your title and discerning, feeling whether you're on the right path or not, kind of having that feeling for, am I being guided, or is this just another ego goal setting thing that's happening?
I mean, how do you make the distinction within yourself?
I know it's all intellectually, I know it's in the feeling, because that's where they keep pointing to. But there's there's a real feeling in front of thought. So it's sort of, I don't know. Especially in the line of business, because everything out there in business world looks very real and concrete. Like the economy's collapsing. We're oversaturated, all this kind of stuff.
How does that relate to your question, Rick? I wasn't sure how that's connected.
Well, because I mean, when like getting caught up in that kind of informs like where I'm going, and like, is it I guess there's a lot of confusion about whether I don't know. I'm very confused. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I think we all are to some degree. So
I'm very curious to see what comes up in this conversation.
all right. Well, thanks, Rick. Can you just say the first thing you said? Because I thought it was really interesting. What was the first thing what you started with? You wanted to sort out, what's wisdom or what's ego driven. I think that was sort of the theme of it.
Getting a feel for it, and this, whether I'm being driven by, or am I following a path, or is this just something goal oriented, or in order to, or something along those. Anyway.
Okay, great. Got it. Thank you. Anybody else? Are these in line with what you're interested in also? Natalie?
Hi, everybody. Excuse my voice, I'm just getting over a cold. But I think it was Rick that you were just talking about. And what everybody else seems to be pointing towards is like if there's a certain purpose, because I feel like I've hit a little bit of a plateau, and I feel like that's a very common thing to go through within the three principles and within our spiritual nature. Sometimes I find myself reading so many books because I enjoy it, and I've read. Now I don't enjoy it because I feel like I'm using it as a technique. So that's kind of where I'm at personally. And I know that kind of, in a way, goes against what is already there, if that makes sense. So on one hand, I find myself wanting to be knowledgeable and doing the concrete work, and then I find myself just not wanting to do any of that and seeing what comes up when I have a quiet mind, for example. So blending those two together, I guess everyone here seems to be trying to find a balance between, even corporate business and our spiritual nature. So where's the little sweet spot in between? We want to have both at the same time. And I feel like you can't. It's like you have to choose one or the other. So I'd like to know your thoughts about that. And because I'm willing to choose, I just uh, want to weigh out my options, if there are any.
Hmm.
Yeah, if that makes any sense. I hope it does.
It does, yes, thank you. Oh, this is great. Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate knowing what you're thinking. Anybody else? Maybe just one more, one, two more, anybody? Yeah, Enrique,
Hi, Ken.
did I pronounce that right?
Yes, Enrique. I think what comes up for me right now is somehow I thought that once I understand this a little bit, peace and understanding and rejoicing the wisdom would be kind of a little bit longer, a more permanent thing. But it looks like is this moving target. I find wisdom, understanding, and the peace of mind that comes from being in this conversation is like, I see it, now I don't. Now I see it, now I don't. And when I see myself doing that too much, I get judgmental about me. Either there is something wrong with me, or there is something wrong with the system, or there is something wrong with the one teaching me this. And I go back to that place that I used to be before. And I go, wait a minute. I spent some time, some of my energy into this. And now it's like, oh, I understand that I'm going to be in this see, not see. And I don't like this idea of chasing a moving target. But I don't know if there is a solution. But that's what is going in my head right now. Thank you.
Wow, that's a great thing, Enrique. Thanks for saying that. We all struggle with that, all of us. Thank you, Paula. Do you have a video, Paula, by any chance?
Yeah, I do. Sorry, I have a lot of things going on here at once. Ken, excuse me. I don't know if what I'm about to ask is something that fits within the framework of what you're looking to address, Ken, but it's a question I do have, so I thought I'd bring it up in case it fits in somewhere. I'll frame this by saying my background is as a spiritual director. So I have in my work, as I became acquainted with the principles, that's how I now operate in my practice. And I am experiencing people really coming to a deep understanding and experience of their spiritual nature of being. What I'm wondering about, and so I'm very happy about that. I'm very happy that for them and that they are, this has made such a difference in their lives. As my business develops in the three principles way, I'm finding that these people who are having these experiences are not referring people to me. And I've actually asked them why. And they say, well, this is too personal. I can't talk about this with people. So they're saying, oh, my life has changed. Nothing's different, but nothing's the same, but everything is different. And I have a new lease on life, but they can't share it with other people. And when people see the difference in them, they don't talk about it because it feels so deep for them. So I'm wondering, have you seen that? And if so, how do you address that? That's what I'm wondering. I don't know if that fits in with the topic today, but that's what I'm experiencing.
Yes, yes, I have looked in that direction quite a bit, had a lot of the same experience, so I'll try and touch on that too.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Eve?
Yeah, it's just listening. Hi, everybody. It's just listening to the questions. And one thing that it reminds me of is the amount of clients that I meet that are highly stressed or on the verge of burnout, and they're able to use that language. And on a one-to-one basis, I can work with them and probably lead them a little bit in the direction of the three principles. But actually, I tend to be getting asked to do a lot of talks, and I want to bring that in larger group settings, just beyond the one-to-one. because I feel if I'm being called to share a message, I'd like to be a little bit more succinct in how I share it. So any tips on that would be great.
Okay, great. All right, we've got a nice, quite a range of things. So where to begin? Um, I'll start in the middle and muck around, I suppose. Um, I think for the last two, Paula and Eve, it's an interesting frame that occurs to me. Sorry, I have a little bit of a cough. When we're working one-on-one with people, I'm assuming you all have contact with, you're all involved in the principles, right? So I'm going to make some assumptions that you know the basic language and the basic teachings of Syd Banks and some of the 3PGC teachers. So I'm going to just assume we're starting at least in the middle, if not advanced. When we're working one-on-one with people, and we have had our own insights and realizations, it's a wonderful thing to be able to be in service to another person and put our own issues and our own ego and our own thinking aside to really be with somebody in service to their well-being and their understanding. And when you do that, you clear the channels for divine mind to come and show you what might be useful for the person. And then you get also a feeling or a timing or a motivation or a way to present something or a tone of voice or an energy, and you, from your heart, you try to love the person and give them some understanding and help them out. And the divine wisdom that comes through you not only feels good to you, but hopefully is helpful to the other person. So in the one-on-one dynamic, whether you're a spiritual counselor or a therapist or a coach, the process is pretty intuitive and instinctive, and it's a beautiful thing. And the words that you say are often modeled by and framed by what your client said or what issues they're focusing on. So it's like, you know, the thinking that is occurring in you that might be helpful to them is shaped, but not only by what they're saying, but by the divine intelligence that comes through you. So the question is then, why don't those people refer to you? Or Eve, what was your question? Remind me again. You're still, I can't hear you, Eve.
Yeah, sorry, I lost myself, my screen. It was really then when you go into the group context.
Right. In the group, right.
It just would be lovely to, because I love what you've just articulated there. It's
Yeah,
just really lovely. Yeah.
Then in the group context, or like in Paula's situation where she wants people to refer to her, or where Connie started, you know, Connie mentioned, you know, how do you help people get out of their minds? Or I forget who was first, but they mentioned, how do you introduce this to business? Well, in the one-on-one coaching situation, you have the benefit of having learned some things and realized some things for yourself. And then the divine wisdom comes through you, through your realizations in service of the client. But in a group situation, unless you've interviewed everybody in advance and you get to know where everybody's coming from, and you're lucky to have a homogeneous group where they're all interested in the same thing, you have to present a framework. Because you can't use the divine wisdom to be responsive to the group, unless the group is set up that way. A lot of teaching groups are set up where you have a group come and you've got some knowledge or wisdom or some expertise. And they're just happy to hear whatever you have to say. And you're going to channel wisdom as best you can. So that's a lovely format. In the business world, that doesn't work because they're not coming to you as a guru. They're coming to wonder, well, what are you going to do for me today? I'm very busy in my business. So what I see is that you have to have a cognitive framework. You have to have a knowledge base. You have to have a system of thinking that not only fits together in itself and represents something true about how the mind works or about life, but is also useful to the group that you're speaking to. So you have to have a cognitive model, a conceptual model. You have words. You have to have words that fit together that make some kind of logic that are connected to and point to the truth of how things work. But also at the same time, it's useful for them in the life that they're living. So at the beginning of working in the business world, we had to craft our story about the principles, which we just call insight principles. And it has mind, which we use different words for. We have consciousness and we have the power of thought. And then we have a framework of implications and ways they fit together that explain why it's useful to know these things, how it can change your life, how it can change the way you operate in your business, and then what that's going to do for the business. So we had to kind of craft our way of talking about that so that when we present to a group at an introductory level, or all the way through a 4-day program while we're talking about it, it's a coherent set of language and ideas that people can have in their mind to refer back to. Because in the business environment in particular, people are pretty much wedded to their rational minds, which is not a bad thing, except it makes them less flexible in being able to look deeper. So we built into our framework that realization is a crucial aspect of learning what it is that we have to share with you. And then we explain to them that realization is a process by which you first hear something in your rational mind, but then you have to look beyond your rational mind to see the truth of it. And then you have to see beyond the initial seeing of the truth of it to commune with it, to contemplate with it, to let it sink in, to let it digest, to let it change you, to allow you to embody the ideas. And sometimes I use the word contemplation. I say, you have to understand what we're saying, but then you have to contemplate, or you have to reflect, or you have to wonder, you have to allow the deeper aspects of your living intelligence to reflect it and embody it. So, Connie, that's how we point people away from their rational minds. We say required for you to learn and make useful what we're teaching to go past your thinking, to really see and absorb what it is that we're talking about. Am I making, I'd love to have a dialogue here rather than just talking too much. So am I making sense? Is this kind of touching on any of your questions? Is anybody listening? I can't tell, I can just see little boxes on the screen. I can't tell if anybody's listening, so.
I'm listening.
Marlene?
And it's really, really useful, Ken, because it's nice to have a framework, but one thing I've heard from you is I need to slow down my framework and actually allow time for that contemplation. And sometimes I don't actually do that when I'm in the group setting. I do it on a one-to-one, but I probably aren't slowing down enough in a group.
Yeah, groups, yeah, that's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Marlene?
Yeah, I agree with Eve that introducing the idea that this is how this learning of this understanding will benefit them, through this contemplation or reflection or integrating the understanding. So they're living it or embodying it. So I think that would be very helpful to set people up to perhaps listen more carefully and be open and curious about how that would show up for them.
Yeah. Marlene, another thing we do is, pretty much from the start, we tell a lot of stories.
Mm.
So we're blessed to have a lot of experience in businesses that this has been very successful. So we have lots of individual and group and business result stories that we can tell people. Where you say, listen, they took the time, they hated us at the beginning because we were going so slow. They put up with us, then they finally saw it, and then they took off like crazy. So we have lots of experiences like that. Go slow to go fast. Richard.
Hi, Ken. I was enjoying your talking about you get an intellectual understanding, and then you're directing or pointing to go to some place that's beyond the intellect and beyond words. And then my mind starts, oh yeah, well, how do you do that? And I can see the people that I'm working with that they're doing the same thing. Yeah, okay, so how do I do that? And they get into more thinking. How do you support someone like me in this instance of getting beyond that and doing the actual reflecting and contemplating? Making any sense?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So just one thing that occurs to me is that I like to explain to people or articulate for people that consciousness is a much bigger field than our rational mind.
Mm.
And there's a lot of beautiful stuff that happens in consciousness when our rational mind is willing to quiet down or move aside or whatever. So I actually articulate for people, if you're actually hearing what I'm saying, or seeing that I'm wearing glasses, or hearing the birds outside, consciousness is operating beyond your rational mind and picking up things in the environment.
Mm.
Or you get a deep feeling come from somewhere, or you get an insight, or you're overwhelmed with a feeling of love, there's all kinds of things that happen that are not rational mind generated. So first, I like to point out to people that there's life beyond the rational mind, and it's happening in you right now, and it happens in you all the time. You're just not noticing. But if you look, it's right there. It's like, you don't have to look very far. All you just have to do is stop thinking, and there it is.
Or stop trying.
Or stop trying, yeah. It's true.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Right. So Connie, or is it Bill?
Honey, that was what Richie said. What I was going to ask you, if you let them into experience of reflection and wondering, but you're just pointing to what they already know, which is beautiful.
Well, in a business group, and I don't know if this is what you were asking, but I think that's where you started. In a business group, we say what I just said about 30 to 40 different ways over the first day or day and a half. And we watch really carefully the looks on people's faces and their body language and what they say and the tone of voice that they're coming from. And what we see is that different people drop into that quiet space and are still present and aware and still capable of thinking for themselves. But they drop into that quiet space. And at some point, there's enough critical mass in the group that the whole group starts to drop into that space. And the way it shows up is there's maybe 5 seconds of silence without any physical restlessness. And then there's 15 seconds of it. And then we'll say, does anybody notice what just happened? And we say, listen, you guys were really quiet for 15 seconds. There was no agitation in the room, and you were all comfortable with each other. Has that ever happened to you in your business before? And everybody says no. We say, well, that's what we're talking about. It's not rocket science. It's just when the other noise, the restlessness of the mind settles down, we naturally go into an awake presence that's peaceful and gentle. It's built into the system. And then they say, well, how do I do that? And I say, well, there is no how. But the more you wake up to how the system works and you see thought and you see yourself separate from thought in the intellectual kind, the easier it is for you to look. And then people just start to look. But notice that I'm also saying it took a day and a half to get there with a lot of business groups. Because they come in with their minds really busy and very active and wanting to swallow everything we have to say, right? And we've had to create a model or a framework or a knowledge of the principles, however you want to say it, or a concept of how the mind works, so that they see enough to reflect on themselves with a knowledge base so that they can give themselves permission to stop. People don't know they have permission to stop thinking. Everything in their life up to this point had been think harder, faster, harder, faster, harder, faster. And we're coming along saying, you can stop now. I don't think so. What else you got to offer?
I really love what you just said, Ken, about there's no how. They ask, how do I do that? There's no how to do, but there's seeing how the system works. And what just occurred to me is how we're so trained to, what's the doing? How does this work? When really that concept of be, do, have, how we're being is what influences our doing and influences what we get. It's kind of turning them to, if I see how the system works, I've just got to be. It kind of encourages them to come back into this awareness of being instead of looking for handholds and strategies in that. Is that kind of how you see that shift? Not doing, but
Yeah,
seeing how it works.
yeah.
Beautiful. Love that.
I like the way you said that, Bill. Beautiful.
Ken, what I've noticed in all my listening to you and Robin both, and I feel that you both share with such clarity what you're about. It seems to fall out of that framework being so clear that you then structure what you say from there. Would you agree?
I don't know, maybe. I can, what occurs to me, Connie, is that we've been in a lot of large businesses with a lot of very senior, very smart executives at very high levels. And they would not tolerate any less clarity than what we bring. So they've trained us. And we made hundreds of really bad mistakes on the way, like really, really bad. I don't even want to remember them. They were so bad. But they trained us to have clarity about where we're coming from and why it's useful. And then a lot of resourcefulness in recrafting the message moment to moment, depending on the person that we're with. It's just been a great deal of education and experience. I think Claire, and I think maybe going back to your question, it's tricky to answer because I talked with Dickon last week and I had a whole insight about something I'd never seen before. So my framework has changed. And I've been teaching this stuff for 32 years.
Yeah.
So
Right.
So you got to have enough of a cognitive map that you feel comfortable with always referring to, but it's always being adjusted and morphed.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Tom?
Yeah, hey, Ken. I was just wondering about, like, in any business or group or even relationship, the feeling people have towards each other can be so important. Does that come up in your either your teaching, or does it happen spontaneously? Like, it seems to me, if people have more of a feeling of goodwill toward each other, that's got to make a positive impact on the business or relationship. And do you teach that? Does it come up spontaneously as people kind of catch on to what you're talking about?
Yes, no, and no.
Great.
Yes, it's definitely crucial to have long-term relationships be in a good feeling. There's no question about that. We look at the feeling as an implication, not a central anchor. And we're brought into a lot of teams that have a lot of bad feeling or distrust or history. And we don't focus on the feeling. We never focus on the feeling. We focus on helping people understand the nature of the mind, the nature of delusion, the nature of thought, the nature of the innate wisdom and peace and dignity that lives inside of us all, were we to get quiet enough to get in touch with it. And we run processes to help the group collectively understand those things and experience those things. And lo and behold, if the group collectively sees and understands those things, they drop into a good feeling with each other. They realize that we're all the same. They realize that we can all get caught up in reactive thinking and distrust. And we can all start over at any moment, looking for the wisdom in the other person and the dignity of the situation. So that's where we focus. Then the feeling tends to sort itself out. I used to do a lot of marriage counseling, and people coming in there really at each other's throats, and I would separate them out for 2 or 3 days and really teach them all of this. And when they got their balance and their understanding, and they realized they're just operating on a lot of bad thinking, and so is the other person, because that's what we do sometimes. And then bring them back together, it starts a whole new thing. So I don't focus on the feeling, I focus on the misunderstanding about the nature of the mind, not about the situation. Am I answering your question, Tom?
Yeah, that's beautiful, because what I'm hearing is you're not trying to teach people to have a good feeling toward each other, but you're teaching them in the basics of what you teach, and then the good feeling just naturally emerges and is there.
Yeah, or sometimes the bad feeling has wisdom in it that needs to get dealt with
Mhm.
in order to protect the dignity of some people.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else?
I'd love to know what your insight was last week.
I can't remember. But it was in the realm of what Enrique asked about. So I'll talk about it in terms of what Enrique said. Enrique, I empathize with you big time. I feel the same way, and most everybody I know also feels the same way. And what I've come to think about it is that the human mind connected to the physical senses is not reliable for knowing the truth. So as long as we're involved in the sensory world, as long as we're thinking about what we've experienced or what we want to experience, or what we don't want to experience, the mind is always rationalizing and interpreting what we're experiencing through our physical senses, through our own lenses and our own preferences and our own misunderstandings. So we're constantly construing a world that is flawed in its logic. We just can't help it. We just can't help it. And the principles have really helped me enormously, because they've helped me realize that's always going to be the case for me in my human mind. My ego will never be satisfied for longer than a half a second. And what it's satisfied with is only itself, basically. The ego can't be satisfied with the world. It can only make up that it's satisfied with what it getting something that it wanted, but then that doesn't last very long. So there's a power that we have in our intuitive silence to know truth. But it's deeper than we think. And if we think we're in touch with it, we're not in touch with it. We're just thinking about it. But we can get beyond our thinking and touch truth, where in our soul we feel peaceful and we feel joy and we feel a kind of blissful presence that we all have inside of ourselves. That is there when the rational mind moves aside. And the rational mind can know that so that we can point ourselves towards having that experience. But we have to let go in order to actually let it happen through us. So, Enrique, I'm with you in trying to figure it out. And I know that all the figuring out will only make it seem less stable and less reliable. And then beyond the figuring it all out, there is something stable and reliable. We just have to stop trying to figure it out. It's a catch-22. It's the joke that God played on us by giving us a human mind.
I am grateful for this conversation right now. First, I got that it's wonderful to have a framework, and I'm helping my clients and things are working well. But when I dance within myself, I get lost. And what I got today from your words is that, like when business people come to you, the rational mind tries to grab the concept and they say, okay, what is this going to do for me? And that's what I see myself doing right now. As when you were talking, I go, oh, I read, I study, I go to meetings and I get an insight. And I go, okay, how am I going to use it? And how am I going to be this? And how is this going to stop my quest for being complete? And in that rush, you get lost. And now you said that there has to be a moment when I give myself permission to slow down and stop and allow consciousness to get this insight that showed up and do something with it. Because the ego is in a hurry to do it. It's like I get a hammer and I want to, it's like when I was young and I learned Kung Fu or Taekwondo and I wanted to kick everything. So I realized, oh, there is a walking slowly. I listen to you, I listen to Deacon, I listen to others, and you talk like this, you are putting me to sleep. And I go, come on, move it, give it. I mean, tell me what I need to hear. But I think in that slowing down is when I'm seeing. So thank you for this moment. You have given me a blessing today. Thank you.
Well, Enrique, I want to say one more thing that I think this will be useful for you, as I'm trying to have it be useful for myself. When you slow down enough, your identity as a rational thinker doesn't want to let go. And that's what's keeping you from seeing the deeper truth. It's not just that we have a rational mind. We're identified with it. We love it. We love how smart we are. We love how we think about things. We love that we can think about things. We love that we can figure things out. We think that's who we are when we're busy with that thinking. And we don't want to let go of that because it's given us pride.
Yes, I think you said that a little bit before when you said we focus on the nature of the mind, not on the nature of the problem.
All right, but I hear Enrique, I wanted to say, I almost finished my sentence. It was, I'm sorry, I apologize, it was a long sentence. If you get really quiet and in your heart you feel peace and joy and bliss long enough, you'll start to realize that you are something else other than your rational mind. But you have to give it time. Rational mind wants to come in and think about it and analyze it and talk about it and revel in it and all that kind of stuff. But if you actually stay out of your intellect long enough, this other sense of self will start to be cultivated in your awareness. You know yourself as a soul, as opposed to a mind. But it takes some cultivating and some investment of time to allow yourself to experience that.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's like building another platform to stand on. Yeah. All right, we have just 3 minutes. So Connie and Bill, and then Rick, you get the last words.
Well, I would love it. I so enjoy when I hear you and Ken talk about exercises that you do with people to make them more aware, let's say, of they're in their thinking mind or they're identified with the thinking mind. Is there any quick exercise you could share with us to show an example of that? Maybe it's too short of time.
Yeah, I don't quite have enough time, but we do a basic course. You know, a lot of people have asked us, how do you teach these principles in business? And since so many people ask us, twice a year, we actually show people. We actually do a public basic course, exactly the way we do it in the business world. We call it Invisible Power, the Next Paradigm, and it's on our website. And we just did one a couple weeks ago. We have another one coming up in November. So you could come and actually experience them all and see what we do. And then we follow that with an advanced course for coaches and consultants who want to take the principles further into their work. And I see Stephanie just put the website up there where we have these programs listed. So
Thank you, Ken.
you're welcome.
I'll just chip in there, Ken, and say I've just completed both of those with Ken and Robin, and I highly recommend them. Absolutely brilliant.
Thank you, Peter. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. It's been a real blessing, a real pleasure. Thanks for coming. It's great to have a party and have people come. So nice to see you all. Thanks, Stephanie, for putting it together.
Oh, thanks, Ken, for being here. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Beautiful to see you.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, everybody. Great questions.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks,
Thanks.
Steph.
Thank you,
Thank
Ken.
you.
That was great.